You ever have one of those moments where you're standing there, jaw clenched, watching everything you've built slowly getting ripped apart, and no one seems to care? That was me, 3 summers ago. My name's Jake, and I used to live on the southern end of Clearwater Ridge, a secluded piece of lakefront property tucked into the woods. My granddad bought it in the 60s when it was nothing but trees, water, and dreams. We built a bridge there, our bridge, over the lake inlet. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. Until the HOA came along. They called themselves the Clearwater Lakeside Property Owners Association, fancy name for a group of people who thought a clipboard and a rulebook gave them dominion over everything. But here's the twist, my property wasn't part of their HOA. Never had been. I lived just outside their jurisdiction line. My land was old, pre-HOA, grandfathered into its own bubble. I didn't pay dues, didn't vote in their meetings, and didn't follow their rules. You can imagine how well that sat with them. The issue started small. At first, it was letters, neatly folded, condescending things stuffed into my mailbox. Your bridge is not in compliance with community standards, they said. It's an eyesore. They told me it affected the aesthetic harmony of the lakeside. I laughed the first time I read that. My bridge had been standing long before their houses went up with their matching docks and paddle boats. But the HOA didn't take kindly to being ignored. Then came the warnings taped to my door. Then the threats. Still, I stood my ground. That bridge had been built with my father and grandfather, timber beams, steel brackets, sweat, and memory. I wasn't going to tear it down because a few retirees in polos thought it clashed with their artificial lakeside paradise. But the HOA wasn't done. I woke up one June morning to the sound of chainsaws. I ran outside in my flannel and boots, heart racing, and there they were, contractors. Tearing my bridge down. Planks already tossed aside like trash, bolts loosened, wood cracking under their machines. I screamed, roared even. One of them turned and said, "We're just following HOA orders." They handed me a paper. A cease and desist tied to some legal maneuver about public access and navigable water rights. Total garbage. They destroyed my bridge in under 4 hours. I remember just standing there after they left. It was too quiet. Just the lapping of the water where my bridge used to stand. And right then, I made a decision. Not out of anger, but something colder. A kind of focused rage. You see, I knew something they didn't. This lake, Clearwater, wasn't natural. It was man-made. And the dam that held it all together? It sat on my property. My grandfather built that dam in 1972. Not a huge concrete monolith, but a solid, reinforced earthen dam with a steel gate to regulate the water level. It fed the lake that everyone in Clearwater Ridge now called their lake. But it wasn't. It was mine. The dam, the water levels, the inflow and outflow, all under my control. They didn't know that. Or maybe they did and just figured I'd never do anything about it. Maybe they thought I was just some cranky loner in the woods. But they made one mistake. They made it personal. I spent a week preparing. I consulted an environmental attorney, just to be safe. She confirmed what I already knew, the lake was private, and the dam was on my land. I was under no legal obligation to maintain water levels to serve HOA properties. If anything, I had been doing them a favor all these years. So I stopped. I shut the gate. Then I opened the overflow valve. Slowly, over the course of a few days, the lake level began to drop. It was subtle at first, just a few inches. Enough to expose the roots of their manicured reeds and tilt their fancy floating docks. Then it got serious. Pontoon boats rested awkwardly on muddy flats. Kayaks scraped the lakebed. Fishers complained. Ducks flew off, confused and flapping. Within 2 weeks, the entire southern end of the lake was mud. And their prized $4 million resort, Clearwater Springs, built right on the shoreline, suddenly wasn't lakeside anymore. Their infinity pool looked out over cracked earth. Guests complained. Refunds were issued. And the HOA? They were furious. They called emergency meetings. Issued statements. Sent lawyers. But it was too late. They came to my door. This time with suits instead of saws. "We need to discuss your dam," the HOA president said, a tall guy with a mustache and a face like sour milk. "You're hurting the community." I didn't even blink. "You hurt my family." He huffed. "We can offer to rebuild the bridge." I laughed. A real, bitter, deep belly laugh. "The bridge? The one my grandfather built by hand? You want to put up a prefab kit and call it even?" They offered money. Then more money. Then threats again. I just showed them the easement maps and the water rights deed. They left empty-handed. News spread. The local paper ran a story, "Clearwater Lake mysteriously drains, residents blame neighbor." I didn't comment. I didn't have to. Word got around fast. The HOA tried to sue, of course. Claimed damages, lost revenue, environmental concerns. But the judge threw it out. Cited property rights, lack of jurisdiction, improper destruction of personal property. Even warned them they might be liable for the unlawful demolition of my bridge. By August, the lake was a puddle. Their precious resort was nearly bankrupt. Half the homes along the shore lost value. Property sales stalled. And me? I spent my evenings sitting on a lawn chair next to the cracked lakebed, drinking a cold beer and watching the sun set over dry land. But it doesn't end there. Because when fall came, the rains returned. And I, being a generous neighbor, decided to open the main gate again. Slowly. Carefully. Water flowed back in. By November, the lake was back, partially, anyway. But I kept it 6 feet lower than before. Just enough to keep their boats useless and their shoreline looking like a drought zone. They rebuilt my bridge, eventually. Not because they wanted to, but because their legal settlement required it. It's not the same, of course. Nothing ever is after it's torn apart. But I made sure they understood something. Respect isn't given. It's earned. You don't mess with someone's legacy and walk away unscathed. Especially not when that someone holds the keys to your precious lake. The bridge stands again now. Stronger than ever. A reminder of what used to be, and what I'm willing to do to protect it. And as for the HOA? They hold their meetings in a rented conference room now. Clearwater Springs is under new ownership, some hospitality group that doesn't even mention the lake in their brochures anymore. And me? I'm still here. Still watching. Still waiting. Because the lake may have come back. But I never forgot how fast they were willing to take everything away. So the next time they think about poking the bear, they'd better remember. The dam still sits on my land. And I've still got the key.